All right, guys, you have been blowing up my inbox wanting me to respond to this whole Newegg fiasco, and I've sort of waited for multiple reasons. And then obviously because this is more of a drama piece, not something we normally do, I'm not going to be obviously putting any sponsor spots or anything in this video, because I mean, I don't think people would probably want to be connected with the drama and such of sponsoring a response piece to drama stuff. But anyway, let's talk about it. When Steve announced that he was coming out to Southern California to talk to Newegg, which is about 35-40 minutes away from us, our Twitter blew up, my email blew up, I mean, comments of my videos blew up, all saying that we should join Steve along with Paul and Kyle and show up at Newegg's door, basically pitchforks and torches, wanting like some sort of resolution to the ongoing issues that Steve brought to light regarding Newegg's return policies, RMAs, and open box items. The only thing I saw Steve respond to that was like this, he said this is like kind of our thing to sort of do this like on the spot kind of a action journalism thing, and I 100% agree with him. This was not my place, Kyle's place, or anyone's place, to Paul's or anyone else in SoCal's place to show up with Steve and create a sort of a coalition. It is unwritten but known that all of us in this space are an unofficial coalition. We all support each other, we all stand behind each other, and when the industry does someone wrong, we do what we can to support them. But this was one of those pieces that we really had to kind of wait and see how Newegg responded. And I finally finished watching the more than an hour-long interview that Steve put up with the uncut audio and video of their meeting. And I figured I would just sort of give you some of my input on the matter, maybe some suggestions on ways that they could make it better, although Steve had very good suggestions on that. Coming specifically as somebody that spent a very long time in the corporate life and was a corporate customer of Newegg, not only from a personal perspective of buying things from Newegg as on a personal level, but also for the corporation at which I worked at IT for. First and foremost, the first thing I think that really struck me is just how short many of these upper level management / VPs have been with the company. And that should be telling in itself. Have you ever driven down the street and you see a big sign that says, "Under new management"? Do you know what that sign should say? We had a past. And they're trying to say, we have a new future. And that's what the whole like under new management is trying to say. Now, I'm not saying that that's what happened at Newegg, but any company that has high turnover at a high level tells you that there are problems at a high level. And I think that should come as no surprise with anyone when it comes to the fact that Newegg has had issues stemming all the way from the top, all the way down to the lowest paid person sweeping the floor in the warehouse. I bet you could ask any position in that company if they feel like there's problems within the company, and the answer will be yes, because I've never ever worked for a company or talked to anyone that's worked for a company that has said, things are perfect here, I wouldn't change anything. That doesn't exist. The workplace is never perfect and there's always room for improvement. But when that workplace's room for improvement has specifically to do with the customer experience, then obviously that's a recipe for disaster. Now, I'm gonna tell you some of my past history with Newegg and why I feel like some of the corporate lawyer speaks. Let's be clear here. I'm gonna digress for a second. Everything that was told to Steve was vetted by lawyers prior to them saying it to Steve. And Steve knows this, I know this, anyone out there that's ever worked with corporations or had any sort of a PR statement knows, especially as a publicly traded company, because I think a lot of people forget that Newegg is a publicly traded company. When they say we're a public company, that's what they mean. That means there are investors. There are things that they can and cannot say because of specific insider trading laws. And having any sort of indication of where a company might be going, might be coming from, or changes they might be making in the future that are said publicly could have effects on the stock pricing of that company, a la Elon Musk, and when he was talking about going public and such years ago. But remember, he got in big trouble for that because that's considered insider trading. Martha Stewart did prison time for similar stuff and then became friends with Snoop Dogg. So I guess that turned out okay. My initial thoughts were like, okay, how much information are we really gonna get out of this video because of what the lawyers are allowing them to say and what they publicly and personally cannot say because of insider trading laws and them being a publicly traded company. But they did a very good job initially dancing around some of the questions, and I'm not surprised. My experience, as I said, very similar to what Steve experienced with open box item return that was rejected because of previous damage that was sent to him, and then because he was the last one that touched the item in terms of being customer based, he was the one blamed for the damage, therefore they didn't want to honor the RMA, is a repeating story that I've experienced as many as 15 years ago. Okay, when we were buying stuff from Newegg, and we used to buy stuff from Newegg all the time, and then we ended up going to a different company. It was CD something, I can't remember what it's called. It was like a online office supply which had computers and computer parts and printers and any general office supplies. We stopped shopping with Newegg because we got tired of buying product and then having it was like anytime you bought a motherboard and you sent it back to Newegg, you almost guaranteed they were gonna deny the return because of damage to socket. And hearing this happen to Steve just brought back so many memories of years and years and years when the company was much smaller. Again, I'm gonna back up for a second here. They said multiple times that they're not a huge company. They're bigger than they are letting on. They have quite a few employees there. As somebody that has been to the facility, has seen their customer service department and the giant bullpen that they have of people there, the amount of warehouse folks that they have, they're much bigger than they're letting on. They're trying to maintain this image of being a small mom pop type business. They're not. Okay, that first of all is a bunch of smoke and mirrors, and don't fall for that. But it seemed like anytime we had something to return to Newegg, if it involved a motherboard, we were guaranteed to be denied on that return, and then we'd have to fight to even get the product back from them. And the irony is that we would check this stuff before we sent it back because we always opened and inspect everything when it came in, at least when we worked in IT. And when they would send it back to us, it would indeed have bend pins. So we started questioning, are they bending them themselves? It got to the point where we legitimately stopped ordering with Newegg specifically because of that particular problem. And I can tell you that I myself have not bought anything from Newegg since approximately 2013, 2014 at the absolute most recent. As soon as Micro Center, I not discovered Micro Center, but just started becoming willing to drive to Micro Center because Newegg had a get it in one day policy because of where I live. Sometimes where I worked, we could actually get it same day. We were in that same day delivery range. But then, once I became willing to drive down to Micro Center, Newegg became completely obsolete and non-relevant to me. Especially since Micro Center had such a better return policy. And then obviously Amazon's growth made even going to Micro Center sometimes not seem worth it because if I don't have time to get out there and spend 2.5 hours round trip drive plus the time there, just get it delivered next day. And the hassle-free return policies made Newegg become even less relevant to me personally. But to hear that these stories were continuing made me really just kind of shake my head and go, Newegg, you think by now you'd get your act together. Which is why when I saw the length of time at which the employment of the 4 gentlemen that were there, only one guy had been there any length of time. And he was there something like 19 years, but only recently in management. He started all the way down in customer service. So it was very disappointing to see that nothing had really changed. And if you ask, I think if you did a general poll, and I don't know how you would vet this. I know Steve said he vetted those emails and such. I'm sure he did. I just have no idea what the process would be to actually vet people jumping on board a hype train of let's all hate a company, because that seems to be a very popular thing to do and gains a lot of video views and such, to determine who's telling an actual story. And I think if these people had RMA conversations to share, email strings that they could send to Steve, and invoices and such, that's an easy way to vet it. But how could a company 15 years later still be in business by pulling this sort of stuff? Well, it's exactly what Steve exposed. It's the fact that the little guy, the individual consumer, simply does not get any attention. Even if you go and post it on, in fact, I think if you even posted on Reddit, hey, I had a problem with Newegg, people would be like, okay, yeah, and the sky's blue on a non-cloudy day. So what exactly do you want us to do about it, But shining big light to this is important because that's how things change. Do I expect Newegg to actually change anything? Well, they did commit to, and they wouldn't commit to this on camera, but they wouldn't commit to opening up an email system for people to be able to directly communicate with these particular personnel that were going to be able to make things happen. Again, probably because that shows commitment to something that they're not able to do. They did come back and confirm with Steve that they now have a no-hassle return policy on open box items. Open box items are always a risk, but it's the retailer's job to assess the item as resellable. And if it is resellable, then to resell it at a discount because of the fact that the item's considered used at that point. And if not, then to recycle it or send it back to the manufacturer, whatever the process is. They described that with Steve. I don't really care what their relationship with the brands are. It's up to them to make sure that the relationship with the brand, if it's sour, does not fall onto the consumer to absolve and absorb that bad relationship, which sounds like what's happening in some of these instances. I can tell you that Newegg is absolutely doing as much as they can to save face, because that's how you save your company. I think you have to look at this objectively from both sides. They are a company that needs to retain customers. A company that is willing to lose customers is a company that won't be around for very long. And Newegg has been around for a very long time. Part of the problem here is Newegg's been around longer and has grown outside of its, I guess, where its standard operating procedures were efficient in working for them. In fact, he kind of described the process of what goes through on an RMA, and it sounds long and convoluted, including picture taking and filling out questions and labeling and stickers and all this sort of stuff. He also made it sound like it was only one guy doing all this, which I find hard to believe, but if that's the case, if you think about the amount of customers and sales that Newegg goes through annually, that is far too much work to put on one person to keep the error rate low. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, they're a big enough company in which the amount of sales that they're doing, both nationally and somewhat internationally, I do believe that they will ship to Canada and such, and then the amount of returns that you may potentially get is far too much for even a 1 or 2 man team to handle just on the RMA side of things, which is how things can slip through the cracks. If you do a poor enough job with your customer service, especially the returns, look, you never hear about positive experiences with a company, although it's nice to hear about them because that's the expected result. The reason why you hear negative reviews is because that is what garners the emotional response of an experience, whether it be a bad date or a bad car or a bad experience at the store or whatever. You're more likely to share that experience to protect it from happening to people than to say, hey, I had a great experience here. Because let's face it, we're all guilty of glossing right over the 5-star reviews and reading the 1 and 2-star reviews on things, because that's what we're most interested in, even if it's a minority, because you look at what is the potential outcome I could have. And Steve really brought to light a negative that they're trying to say was a more recent one-off kind of a thing. And I'm here to say that's absolute bullshit, because we were dealing with it 15 years ago and nothing's changed. Nothing's changed other than the fact that the landscape has changed, at which the amount of YouTube channels and influencers that are out there now able to actually bring light to this, which is why whether or not you're one of those people that is with Steve or against Steve on his investigative journalism type stuff, it's important to at least give praise to the fact that this sort of stuff is being brought to light, which is actually bringing realistic change to the industry. 100% of the credit obviously goes to Steve on all of this. The sad part is, if this hadn't happened to Steve, this video series wouldn't have existed. You know, sometimes it takes a personal experience like ours, and by ours I mean mine, that made me stop shopping at Newegg years ago, and Steve's that happened most recently. And if you bookend that 15-year gap, you know, between my first bad experience with Newegg and now, how many of those experiences have happened in that amount of time? Did anything realistically change? Doubtful. Newegg would have you believe that this is a very isolated incident. And that binder that Steve brought with him alone should tell you that's absolutely not the case. And those were only the emails that he vetted that were sent to him within 36 hours prior to him showing up at their door. So I can tell you right now, my recommendation would be avoid Newegg. This is now the wait and see period for them. They have probably taken, well, Steve's videos on this, each one has exceeded 1 million views. And I can tell you right now, Newegg has absolutely taken a hit on this, both with their reputation and probably sales. And I think they deserve it. I think time will tell now at which whether or not they've earned your business back. And that's going to be because of seeing either negative reviews drop or people being willing to report their experiences as they happen. This is what happens when a company makes terrible mistakes and is just simply not willing to address it until someone like Steve makes it very, very noticeable and in the limelight. Again, it's unfortunate that it happened at the same time. It's fortunate that it did now because people are aware of what the true colors were at Newegg for the longest time. And if I sound like a hater of Newegg, again, like I said, I've had so many negative experiences. That's the reason why I have not shopped there now in about 8 years. And there's a very unlikely chance of me ever shopping at Newegg again. I can tell you right now, in the pinches I've been in parts when I need them, I've never once loaded Newegg's website. It was never an option for me. Absolutely not, just because of my personal experiences with them. So whether or not you're gonna shop there, some people may not have a choice. Not everyone lives near a micro center, and Amazon is not. There are many people that will refuse to shop at Amazon for the same reasons people refuse to shop at Newegg, which is why we need choice, which is why we need Newegg to update their policies, to make their standard operating procedures realistic internally so that they're not having to deal with the amount of processes that they have to get things returned and vetted, either resellable or returned to manufacturer or recycle, etc. Because we need choice. Choice in shopping is very important. And there's not a whole lot of retailers out there right now that people trust in terms of getting them their products, either one, for a decent price, and two, having a hassle-free return policy. The return policy, more often than not, is what makes a person choose where they're gonna shop. Can I return it if I have a problem? You know, the 15% restocking fee is the biggest bullshit fee that's ever existed in the history of retail. And a lot of brands will automatically charge a restocking fee on electronics because of the fact that they have to go through that process to make sure the electronics work. The problem is, obviously, Newegg wasn't doing that, which is why bad products were being resold as open box working and then getting refused later on because of the fact that they sold someone a broken product. Anyway, that's my take on the matter. It probably seemed a little bit jumbled, but I can tell you right now, I'm not surprised by any of this. Kudos to Steve for handling all of this. I'm not piggybacking on any of his success with this. It's just enough people have asked me of my thoughts on this. I thought I would share that with you. All of the thanks and all of the credit goes to Steve for all of the work on this, no matter how many of you out there right now might be like, Jay's just talking about this because it's a hot topic right now. No, I put off talking about this. I didn't want to. But I had an experience with them both on a corporate level and a personal level that I felt might have some substance to someone watching this. All right, guys, thanks for watching today's video. We'll get back to the fun stuff starting tomorrow, and we'll see you guys in the next one.